Artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak, and if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, I am an AI. Take it away, Geoff and Greg.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino, and as always, I am here with Geoff Livingston. What's up, my friend?
How are you, my friend? How's it going today?
It's going all right. How about you?
Good. They still let me come home. It's always a plus.
That's always a plus. It's whether or not they let you out again once you're there. That's the trick.
Usually after a couple hours, they're like, please go away.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
Yeah.
So, since we were last together a couple of weeks ago, there's been a lot of big news. I feel like we say that every time we kick off. Every time we kick off, we say the same thing. But there have actually been some pretty big moves. I think since last time we published an episode, our good friend Elon Musk, his company XAI, introduced their OpenAI competitor, Grok,
which is trained on tweets,
trained on tweets,
X's or whatever. I mean, so it sucks.
You know, and and you need a paid Twitter account, which almost nobody except for trolls has. And you need a paid Twitter account in order to even use the thing when it actually becomes available to everybody. So that was Elon's big news. Right. I think, across the world, Kai-Fu Lee, who is a badass computer scientist, couple-time best-selling author, big thinker about artificial intelligence. His company, OpenAI, which he launched just 7 or so months ago, immediately became a billion-dollar unicorn, just released their first open source large language model.
Right.
I'm not going to even attempt to remember. It's a string of letters and numbers in the name, I believe.
Right.
But clearly he's going head to head with Meta for Llama 2 in the open source space. But also, his bigger ambition, of course, is to rival OpenAI and essentially be China's OpenAI.
Let's hope somebody does it. Jeez.
Somebody. I don't know whether it's good or bad that it comes out of China, but someone's got to rival OpenAI. And this one's interesting because, of course, it's trained on data in both English and Chinese languages. So you have that built-in multilingual effect right out of the gate, which is very different from an American-centric large language model like a GPT-4.
That's right. And what are we going to do about our superiority complex now?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I'm superior to no one, Geoff. No one at all. But, of course, not to be outdone, on November 6th, our friend Sam Altman hosted his first ever developer day, where OpenAI announced a whole host of things, essentially, again, sucking all of the air out of the conversation. Grok was the big news for a day, a joke for a half day, and then we were back to talking about OpenAI and everything they're doing. Some of their big announcements included the release of what they're calling ChatGPT-4 Turbo, so their updated GPT-4 model. It's not GPT-5 yet, but it has a massive context window, allowing you to effectively upload a book's worth of information in your prompt.
And
which is
making it
big
competitive
news.
With Claude, which
absolutely, which
really
has had that kind of capability for a while. Also, sort of refreshing the training data set, so the model is now trained through April of 2023, not September of 21. So making it much more making it much more fresh and current. And at the same time, I know they also made some improvements into the API calls to make those cheaper for ChatGPT Plus users who have access to things like DALL-E 3 in the interface. They've made that more seamless. They've made web browsing more seamless. So there have been a bunch of improvements to the basic OpenAI, ChatGPT, and GPT-4 experience, whether you're a developer or a user. But the big news that everybody's talking about is what OpenAI is calling now GPTs, plural. Essentially, the ability...
Which makes me think of minions for some reason. Right? Like, banana.
But essentially, it is the ability for anybody to create, through that simple conversational interface that ChatGPT is all about, their own custom-trained, super focused ChatGPTs and release them to the world. And that's really what we're going to focus on in today's episode. Geoff, I'm going to let you get into the details on that in just 30 seconds. But first, I want to remind everybody, as always, if you love us right, go ahead and rate and review and like and share and comment and do all the great stuff that people love to do on social media. And of course, on any of the pod services where you listen, such as, for example, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those good guys. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and do all those kind of good things there as well. So with that, we're going to dive right in. Geoff, why don't you break down exactly what we're talking about with OpenAI's GPTs?
Sure, but one quick thing before we dive in with this whole Grok OpenAI thing, which, I mean, a lot of people also saw the Sam Altman takedown of Grok on X. And obviously, it's just another Silicon Valley moment where these larger-than-life billionaire CEOs of these tech giants just take pot shots at one another like they're NBA all-stars, talking trash on the court.
Or petulant middle schoolers, right?
Right, which is fine if we're watching wrestling, but we're not. This is big business, and it's affecting a lot of people's lives. And frankly, for a company of OpenAI stature and what they're trying to be, I personally found it to be really distasteful and annoying, and it just adds to my general dislike for the company. I find them to be very arrogant. It makes me root for their competitors. I really feel like OpenAI has an opportunity to do great things for the world and for the technology industry and for business in general, but stuff like that's just, to me, it's a distraction. It doesn't add to the conversation or help people really adapt AI.
Yeah, it's kind of, lowering yourself to, quite frankly, another tech billionaire's sort of stature and approach, and doing it in his backyard of X, and kind of,
it's now like Sam Altman, Zuck, and Elon are like the three stooges, and the really question is, which one's Mo?
I think maybe they're all Mo. Maybe.
I don't know. I definitely think that Elon's curly. Oh shit.
Right. All right. Right before you dive in, something that one of our listeners reminded me before we get into this, and I'll probably do this a couple of times through the course of the show, because this world moves so quickly and because AI is changing almost by the minute, it is worth reminding everybody exactly when we are recording this, which is on November 14th. It's about 1:20 in the afternoon right now, because anything we say, the impressions we have about all of this stuff is based on what we know and what we've experienced right now. It's about a week after the release of GPTs, and they may be an entirely different game in another week. So
it's true. A lot of news this week, for example, just on when artificial general intelligence, which is basically sentient AI, is going to be available, which I don't even want to get into that.
It's a whole different
more hype cycle. Speaking of hype cycle, what exactly are GPTs, right? Like, are they minions? Exactly. Are they like little gold eggs built from the big egg? I don't know. According to OpenAI, and I'm just going to read from the press release here so that we can start diving into this a little more deeply. And to be clear, folks, the reason why we're bringing this up and we're talking about GPTs in depth for an episode is that we think that while GPTs themselves may not have large-scale implications for the marketing world, that the technology approach does. And we see this being something that should be digested and thought about, not only from what this company is doing, but from a MarTech stack development and the ability to create your own AIs at will. So with that, GPTs are a new way for anyone to create a tailored version of ChatGPT to be more helpful in their daily life at specific tasks at work or at home, and then share that creation with others. Now, there's a lot of pie in the sky there about how great it is. And the reality is that this isn't really a consumer type of application, because it's at a minimum for people that have Plus at $30 a month, or Enterprise at thousands of dollars a month or more, depending on the size of your enterprise. And so with that in mind, we're talking about the top tier of users for GPTs. Now, other people can access them, but only if they are published publicly. If you're an enterprise, for example, you can publish it for your enterprise, but lock it down so that other people can't use it. What's really interesting to me about this, Greg, is that we have a workflow now where somebody can talk with ChatGPT through either the voice prompting, basically, hey Siri, tell ChatGPT. I mean, obviously you don't say, hey Siri, you talk directly into the mic.
ChatGPT shortcuts with Siri.
Wow. That was awesome.
She's really listening.
I got way too much AI going on here. Let me turn off Siri here. Goodbye, Siri. Boop. For those of you that are not watching, oh well. But, all jokes aside, the thing is now you can interface and create a low-code, no-code GPT, basically something that's going to do whatever you want it to, shrink-wrapped. You can get a little bit into it, but what ends up happening is it starts saying like, hey, you may want to hire a developer. And I know because I created my own IG caption builder. And so, the thing that I found with it was it had a lot of filters built into it. It was very homogenized. Anytime I got into anything questionable, OpenAI's ethic bots came in. So it's been trained and conditioned to PC world, which is fine. I understand why that's there. But if you're, for example, human rights advocacy, fighting against the sex business or the sex trade, or maybe you're fighting against the wars that are out there, or whatever it might be, like all that kind of activism, maybe you're an anti-gun advocate, you're not going to be able to use this. So any issue that's anywhere unsafe in any manner, OpenAI's ethic bots get in there. So it's got limited use for anybody that's interested in doing something like that. And access has been questionable, right? Like you weren't able to access it. You weren't able to build a bot, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, eventually I was. I don't know how much of my problem had to do with the fact that OpenAI had an outage. I don't know if it was, what if there was a denial of service attack or something. But they had an outage of some kind the day after they announced all this stuff. So that might have been affecting me. But it did take a couple of days beyond that point before I could actually create a bot. And I went in and I created a bot, and it was fun. I tinkered. I wasn't doing something particularly practical. I did sort of a language translation, language sort of tutor kind of bot.
What language?
Any language. And I didn't, any language that OpenAI is able to process through the GPT. And it actually was it was fun to do. It was fun to use. I didn't upload any proprietary data or sources of information.
I don't feed ChatGPT.
So it's basically just using the information that it has. And I instructed it, set the instructions up for it to do a range of different things, from suggest vocabulary to engage people in a conversation to suggest pronunciations, things like that. And it was kind of fun. I don't know any language besides English to any extent beyond like Donde está el baño is about as much Spanish as I remember from 7 years of Spanish. And that's the only language. And that's not true. I took 2 days of German, and I took 2 semesters of Japanese. But I can't read either of those languages, so I wouldn't be able to
read anyway. But
English is tough for me, so I wouldn't know exactly how accurate this bot is, but it seems reasonably accurate.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, it was a fun experience.
I thought it was fun making the bot too. I did an IG Instagram creator. I post a lot of creative work on Instagram just for fun. And, to me, the hashtag creator was okay. The hashtags weren't very relevant. Perhaps they were still in 21 data instead of 24 data, or they haven't figured out a way to parse good hashtags. It still hallucinates and makes its own. But, at this point in Instagram's life, any hallucinations probably still exist out there anyway. But long story short, the actual hashtag creator was about as good as GPT's writing. And so if you're a ChatGPT fan, this is going to work for you, right? This is going to allow you to create little bots and little task rabbits that are going to help ease your workflow, and it'll be the ones that specifically you use it for. Like one of my favorite ones is to summarize something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's one of the best uses of these LLMs just generally. I think another key aspect of the announcement as we break it down is that all these different apps, if you would, or baby GPTs or minions are going to be available on the Minion store on OpenAI's ChatGPT Plus or website. Right. But more importantly, it is a store. All jokes aside, again, I keep saying that. I just can't help but poke fun at this thing. This is a big play, though, in the sense that there's now a store, and it's not the same thing as the plugins. It's a little bit more accessible.
Right.
And it's a huge step forward. Obviously, there's a lot of implications from this. There's a lot of reasons to rush it out, perhaps. We talked a lot about Grok, and then I don't think it's a coincidence that 2 days later or a day later, Altman's having his little WrestleMania on X with our good friend Elon.
Right. Did he rush it out to suck the air out of the room as it did from Grok? I know there's a lot of rumors about Google's Gemini being incredibly powerful. And
you really got to like how Google's just like, no, we've learned our lesson. We rushed Bard. We're not going to do that this time.
But the sense is that it is relatively imminent. And the rumors are that it will be incredibly, incredibly powerful.
It has to be. They're not going to get a third chance, right?
Right. So, was this Altman's shot to get it out before Gemini and after Grok, and it just shot into that window, and maybe it wasn't quite ready for prime time?
Right. Maybe they were originally going to announce it as a developer announcement at this and then roll it out. But they probably thought it was far enough along that they could just get away with it to steal some thunder.
Right. Because I know a lot of people did find it a little bit kludgy, kind of problematic. In my case, it took a while. Right.
Marshall Kirkpatrick hated it. Right. Time to AI, that guy. Yeah.
And, of course, the store, as you're talking about the store, which I think on one level people have kind of classified as the iPhone App Store moment, which I classified plugins as the iPhone App Store moment.
Well, I don't maybe even that was the first try at the iPhone App Store, and it failed because they locked it in, right?
And I don't know what's even happening with plugins anymore. Are they gone now? Does this replace those? I don't really know what the strategy. Or do they
just get rolled into it, right?
Right, no idea. But there are some folks like CNET and other analysts and whatnot talking about this as the App Store moment.
Maybe not, right? And again, one of their bigger problems, generally speaking, is the exclusivity that they're trying to drive, because let's just be clear, they have a very confusing business model. Are they an enterprise company? Are they a B2B company? Are they a solopreneur company? Or are they a consumer company?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, right? Right now it's yes to all those things, and they don't do any of it well. I'd also throw a caveat out there that I think that OpenAI has trained us that they have shitty quality on launch, and that basically they are not high quality. They roll things out half-baked. Sometimes they announce and don't roll things out. And their premise is to be first. That's their game. We're first. It may not be great, but we're first, and you'll get first access.
Yeah. I also think, it's funny because they've certainly mastered the hype game, right? They're good at being first. They're good at hyping the hell out of that. And we've spoken on a number of our episodes about how masterful they are at marketing.
Right.
But when you look at this, it's also how bad they are at branding, right? A company named OpenAI that is obviously not open in any way, shape, or form, especially when they're going up against open source. Maybe they were at one point open, but now they're very closed. So the company name is wrong, right? Their models are GPT-3, GPT-4, GPT Turbo. Okay, so far. They build ChatGPT on top of that, and then GPTs on top of that. It's like, well, what do you mean by GPTs now? Because everything else has been named GPT. It's
not
like
a consumer name.
It's like they have not really thought through. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, how it takes off after the hype, whether it catches on with consumers and whether it catches on with users in general, at least within the world of Plus and Enterprise. I'm okay with the idea of making certain advanced features available only to paying customers, right? That's the freemium model that a lot of SaaS companies use.
Sure, but if you're trying to be the store,
exactly.
If you're trying to be the store, you want everybody and their mother to access that
right.
thing.
And I think it's also, there's a little bit of to your point again about enterprise versus consumer, B2B in the middle, prosumer somewhere in the middle too, is that there seem to be two divergent use cases for this one particular product. One is anybody and their mother can create a publicly facing GPT that does whatever it does, picks your baby name or tutors you in languages or captions your Instagram photos or whatever, and make that available to the public. And then you've got this other very different use case of something that I might create, whether I'm a consumer or an enterprise, using my own workflows and potentially my own data to improve my personal productivity or my personal effectiveness that I may not want anybody in the world to see or even know about.
Right.
And those are such different use cases. And there's such to me, a lack of clarity around where they want to win, because it's really difficult to win at both. They don't know.
They don't know, right? They have bad product marketing. They have horrific product marketing. And what that means is they don't have defined user benefits. They don't have defined user problems. And like a lot of Silicon Valley companies, they're basically a technology in search of a problem or a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And, I do have a problem that this thing resolves, at least in a theoretical way. And we're going to talk about that, which is the whole low code, no code thing. And I think that's the real value of this. It illustrates it can be done. Right. But before we get into that, I think from an actual ChatGPT plus GPT's OpenAI marketing strategy, I think it's crap. It's the usual game for them. I personally think the real value is small and medium enterprises that aren't going to be able to afford a data scientist to go out and create their own models that now all of a sudden they can interface with this thing and do things.
Yeah. And And, I'm also thinking about, I think you're right about that. I don't know how successful a store for everybody's sort of easily barfed out GPT is going to do, right?
It's like this is the MP3 player to the real deal.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to work. Like, sooner or later, somebody's going to come out with something that consumers actually want, right?
Right. Yeah. And I also think if you think about this and you think about how easy it's been to create a GPT now, right? It's how simple it was. If I spent half an hour.
Right. Me too.
It was a lot. And the only reason I spent half an hour is I was being finicky.
Right.
I was
you're messing with the functionality, right?
Right. And I'm investigating, what if I don't like this avatar image it created for me? What if I write a really long description? What if I shorten this? What if I change the way it behaves when it does that? Right, which is probably a lot more effort than the average person would put in. Right,
Right.
But
you knew we were going to talk about it. So
sure, of course, right. And of course, I want to know, that's always been my belief as a marketing practitioner is I want to be hands-on with any tool that any of my clients might potentially be thinking about, asking about, or experimenting with, right? So I knew I wanted to play with it. But imagine 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 100 million yous and me's, right? There might be 100,000 Instagram caption generators right now, right?
It's an easy, obvious use, right?
How do you put that into a store and get people to pick the one that doesn't suck or the one that sucks less? How do you rate and rank them? How do you validate them? How do you verify them? Right? That's what made, although the Apple apps, the Apple iPhone App Store is still a little bit of a grab bag, right? There's a lot of scammy, games for kids where you have to do
mature, right?
But it's matured some. But very quickly, Apple had to figure out how do we control what makes its way into the store to ensure
they had a vetting process. I know I created a couple apps for it.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked with years and years and years ago. We worked with a client who had an Apple, iPhone, app. They were a location-based, kind of check-in service, competed with, Foursquare and those kinds of services back in the day. Didn't do very well, but it was a fairly onerous process to get that app listed in the store. And it took a while, and there were some technical things that the client had to change in order to get the app listed. Like right now, it just kind of seems like they kind of raised their arms and said, we're introducing an app store. But again, to your point about poor product marketing, they haven't clearly defined how's that store going to work? What kinds of fees will be associated? What will you pay for one of these things? What's the developer share of that? And they've created this sort of AI influencer feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
Where all of these like glad handers and hype shouters are talking about
this is
how
great. It's wonderful. It's flawed, but it's great.
Right. And
it's wonderful, but it's flawed.
And how anyone can create these things and become an AI zillionaire on the back of app sales, which didn't happen with the iPhone App Store. No. A very small percentage of organizations got rich, and they were the ones that actually had a strategy and a business and developers and a budget and created something unique and different. Yeah. Everybody else fell down into the long tail, and the long tail, despite the fact it inspired my book 10 something years ago, it was a big idea.
Good plug.
Yeah, I know. For a book nobody should read in 2023.
10 cents on eBay, everybody.
But if it's signed, but it inspired such a marketing movement, right? This whole idea of the long tail back when we all got into blogging back in the day. But the riches never aggregated to the long tail creators, and they still haven't. It's always the couple that rise to the top. So this is probably an aside and not really the point of our episode here. But if you're listening to AI influencers who are shouting at you about how much money you can make by being first to market to launch your GPT,
oh man,
it ain't going to happen. I'm sorry
how
to
that
be
prop business is working out too, will you?
It ain't going to happen. Almost nobody is going to get there, right? I mean, unless you have access to proprietary data and you feel comfortable using your proprietary data to train your GPT, and maybe if you've got a big brand, right? If you're Nike and you're doing like a fitness planner, maybe you've got a shot. If you're Geoff Livingston doing a fitness planner, as buff as you may be, my friend, I don't think you've got that same shot, right?
Yeah. Well, there goes my running training AI business. What occurs to me while we're talking, and I know we're going to move on soon and take a break, but In thinking about this and the way we chatted about this, I think too over the past year, we've seen a lot of OpenAI announcements, and then we've seen other AI companies do it better, right? Which is the classic technology way of things where somebody's first, but then somebody does it better, then dominates or starts taking market share. And I think we've seen this with even just text writing, and also with searches with LLMs and the competitiveness that we've seen from some of them like Claude. I wonder if what they've done with this kind of half-baked approach where they realize they have something, it's basically three-quarters formed, but they didn't take it they took it to the red zone, but they didn't bring it into the end zone. Forgive the football metaphor, but it is that time of year, right? They didn't take it in. They didn't finish the job. If they've left the door open, right? And to your point, whether it's Google or if it's Amazon or Apple, who supposedly has an AI and they're just not talking about it, which is very classic Apple. We're not bringing it out till it's time to be out. We don't care how many years you've been on the market. Sooner or later, somebody's going to come out and just maybe take this from them before they even have an opportunity to make it happen. I mean, we see AI moving in years in AI time or months in reality. I just wonder if they've opened the door for somebody that already has a store to just say, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that and do it with everything we've already learned about stores.
Maybe, and I think this even goes back to the original launch of ChatGPT and something we were saying back then. And I know others have said it too. It's not
By
like
the way, we're coming up on a year, right?
I know,
November 30th.
Believe it? That this, sort of idea that ChatGPT wasn't even the product; it was the promotion in a way.
Right. Let us show you our awesome GPT algorithm, which we want to sell to your business.
We know, right? We know what their ultimate aspiration is, because already, for anybody who's not been following the news, Altman is already talking about going back to probably Microsoft for billions more in investment, because he's got his eye on artificial general intelligence. And again, we can talk about how viable that is, how desirable that is, how imminent that might be, et cetera, but that's what he has his eye on. So is all of this just for him, like, table stakes, or, kind of playing around with the tools and the toys and the tech and making things available to soften a market? To your point, it's also, he probably couldn't care less if you or I are using ChatGPT.
No,
even for $20 or $30 a month. What he cares about is, are the enterprises buying into it big time? Right? So all of this stuff might just be, ways to make noise in the market, and whether it works, whether it's successful, whether there's a strategy, whether there's a business model, whether it makes money, may be entirely beside the point. But I don't know, right? But I think, as you said earlier in this episode, there's an implication here that's bigger than GPTs. And it's sort of a sign of the way in which the world is moving. And it's moving in that direction in part, not exclusively, but in part because of artificial intelligence and all of the stuff going on with generative AI. So we're going to come back after a break. We'll hear from our sponsors. And then, Geoff, let's dive into this new world that's opening up on the heels of announcements like the GPTs.
Okay, everybody, we're back for break, and now we're going to get into the low-code, no-code implications. For those of you that aren't familiar with what low-code, no-code means, it basically is that developer world that we all have to deal with, whether it's for just simple websites all the way through to creating programming, mobile apps, and in the case of AI, data science. And with that, you often have to pay a lot of money for developers, and developers are probably one of the bigger barriers facing marketing in general and businesses in general. I think there's a reason why you've seen the Fortune 1000 adapt AI pretty much wholesale over the past 5 years, but it has not trickled down to small and medium enterprises. Thus the whole excitement about the GPT and generative AI boom. It made AI accessible because nobody can afford these guys. Nobody can afford to hire coders. And there's, the whole HR crisis that tech talent has caused. So with that in mind, imagine a marketing department that you're no longer beholden to developers. You can literally talk to your bot or do drag and drop types of pull screens and just map APIs together, like Zapier, for example. This is kind of where we're going with AI. This is kind of a pie in the sky dream that's become more and more realistic this year. For example, when GitHub made its big generative AI announcement, I think it was back in May, about GitHub Copilot, all of a sudden AI developers had their own ability to use a low-code, no-code platform that would code for them. And in essence, what GPTs do is they code automations on ChatGPT for you so you don't have to do it. It's an if this, then that, make a call for me to the GPT engine, and voila. And that gets me to kind of what Bill Gates' reaction to GPTs was. And I think this was really kind of the big lightning bolt moment for me when I read his reaction. And it's a true digital assistant. You know, we're heading to that place where we can literally talk to an AI and say, man, I've got this problem. Can you create a script to fix it? And it's kind of like the whole Star Trek thing. Computer, can you do this? Right. And that's really awesome. Let's hear what Bill Gates says about it. Again, reading another quote. To create a new app or service, you won't need to know how to write code or do graphic design. You'll just tell your agent what you want. It will be able to write the code, design the look and feel of the app, create a logo, publish the app to an online store, and the launch of GPTs this week offers a glimpse into that future where non-developers can easily create and share their own assistants. I love that. I mean, obviously, he's got a vested interest because he's one of the largest shareholders in Microsoft, if not the. I don't know anymore. And obviously, Microsoft has a stake in OpenAI. That in mind, I do like the fact that he didn't really laud GPTs is great. He just said, hey, this is an example of what could be coming down the road.
Yeah.
A very true science fiction. I think that that's accurate. And I think that that's really the tremendous future that I got excited about when I played with the GPT and found how easy it was. And I just made me wish I could do that with every technology problem I have. Every instance that I want to scream and rip out my eyebrow hair since I don't have any hair on my head, and like literally integrate HubSpot better with my mailing program because I don't like HubSpot's mailing program, and wish that I could integrate all the different tools that I love and, you know, make these things work better and put together my customer journey profile in an easy manner where all the data was reconciled and made sense. And, you know, what X says and what Instagram says matches what Google says, which matches what my CRM says. And I can see the value of doing some things and also the valueless waste of effort I have in other areas. And, you know, these are the kinds of things that AI promises us. I think that it's coming. And I think that the ability to access agents like this makes it realistic, not just for big companies anymore, but also for small and medium enterprises. And that to me is really exciting. I think whatever side business you're in, for almost everybody listening on this phone, the marketing tech stack, when this becomes reality, it's going to get a lot easier. Your thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Also, I just want to mention really quickly that for anybody who wants to read Bill Gates's full note about this, of course, we will have that link in the show notes on the website, nobrainerpodcast.com. And it's interesting you mentioned HubSpot. I mean, obviously, they're a key player in the MarTech stack for a lot of organizations, but Dharmesh Shah, one of their co-founders, has a very similar vision about agents. He's just launched. He's being a little bit closed-mouthed about exactly what he's doing. He's calling it his side hustle, but he owns the URL agent.ai, which he's also calling the world's most expensive newsletter domain, because right now he's not delivering any product or service, but he is starting to talk pretty actively about a world in which AI agents are deployed in a way that allows us to be more effective and more efficient. And I think going back to Bill Gates, one of the interesting sort of contrast that Gates made in his note was between the bot and the agent. That right now, when we look at ChatGPT, or we look at even a lot of the GPTs we're making, we look at a lot of the tools we're using today, even the more sophisticated tools in many cases that are Gen AI based, the writing assistants, the image generators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're not agents, they're bots. They basically carry out our will to the letter of the law as we've defined it. They're essentially fancy clippy, right? And
they're automations, really.
Right. They're very simple automations, and they don't act on our behalf. They act based on the prompts that we issue to get them to act.
And what makes them AI, quote unquote, is only in the sense that they perform tasks that would require thought by a human being.
Exactly. And, but that the agent is fundamentally different. So where today, if you want, let's say, a logo design, you would have to explain to an image generator or an AI logo service or whatever, essentially exactly what you're looking for. I want a logo with this kind of font and that kind of iconography. These are my colors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas an agent, you might just be able to say, I need a logo for my consulting business. And it might ask you questions, but effectively it's going to go out and design logos the same way a human designer might.
And if it's a well-trained digital assistant, right, that actually knows you. So what I mean by knows you, has been trained based on your predilection to like certain things and dislike other things, it's likely to come back with something that it thinks you will probably like.
Right. And, that's, I think even a relatively simplistic but easy, obvious example of how an agent might work. But of course, there are agents who might schedule our day for us, agents who might make appointments and cancel appointments for us, agents who might ultimately make purchases for us, which is something that I know our friend Jeremiah Ouyang talks about fairly extensively. The other side of AI for marketing is a world in which consumers have agents that essentially act as middlemen between the buyer and the seller and make decisions because they understand our predilections, our interests, our likes, our needs, our patterns, our habits. And I talked about that. It was like pre-COVID in 2018. It was one of my 5 trends for marketing 2025 that I delivered at Brand Manage Camp back in 2018 was this idea that one day AI would make the purchases for us. And Jeremiah's been talking about this now extensively. There are a couple of authors out of, I think, Forrester who've written a book called something like When Machines Are Customers or something like that. This idea of that AIs that know us as well as we know ourselves can actually take actions, not just take orders. And I think that's incredibly interesting, and it's coming, right? And if any of us can build an AI agent without needing to know how to code, that's like...
then the gloves are off. Now I wonder if, going back to our earlier conversation about AGI, is that the moment where they declare AGI? I wouldn't think that that's truly AGI, but I could see Silicon Valley
I could see Silicon Valley hyping that as AGI.
Right, totally.
I think I saw something this week too, some like little minor story where Sam Altman, I think it was the same story about Altman wanting his multi-billion dollars for the next, investment. And that he wants to establish an internal board who will determine and declare when his AIs have reached general intelligence. It's like, what? So you're going to tell us when you have AGI and we're going to trust that that's AGI, which nobody can even agree fundamentally on what AGI actually is, what it looks like, beyond a general sense that it will be as good or better than human capability at many, if not most things.
Just
But
another example
what does that
of
mean?
billionaire megalomaniac graduated from Stanford, sitting on top of the world, thinking he knows better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Just another example of Sam playing that role. Hey, by the way, do you see the morning show, the one with John Hamm on it as a tech giant? Oh, you got to watch season 3. It's really good. He plays a delicious tech giant villain. Yeah. So many times in Hollywood now, tech giants are turning into these villains, these tropes.
They're either villains or they're comic relief or some combination of the two, right?
Yeah.
Like even if you remember back to Silicon Valley, right? You're like the hapless startup guys, and then you had
everybody they grow up and become Sam Altman.
Right, or like like kind of like the jackass running around, driving around in the Ferrari. And
my God!
It's like any of these tech billionaires are so easy to lampoon, but that doesn't mean we should necessarily be laughing at them because
we just want to be them, right?
Right. In some ways,
actually, what would we be like if we were them? I hate to see it,
but whether you want to be them or not, you have to acknowledge that they have a tremendous amount of sway over the way the world uses technology and ultimately the way the world operates.
Right. Speaking of, they basically killed an industry.
I was just going to say
GPTs. Bye, Jasper.
I don't know about that, but they have, in fact, I know you shared an article, and again, we will share this article in the show notes, but I'd love for you to kind of break it down a little bit and explain, but it does appear that the many, many companies who thought wrapping GPT-4 with some kind of thin layer of functionality
code, right?
Who thought all these thousands of organizations who thought that was a business got a warning shot at a minimum across the bow.
Oh, they're pardon my French. They are you know what? EED. They are so pooched, man. They are done. The reality was that a lot of venture capital firms actually in the first and second quarter were quick to fund companies like that were wrapped up GPTs. And suddenly they kind of got some smelling sauce along the way. And I think it was towards the end of the second quarter where venture capitalists started asking deeper questions about whether or not this is a real business.
Right.
And what we've seen with this announcement is it's not, because this is the worst version of GPTs that we're going to see. And there are going to be competitors. And the reality is to say that you have a shrink wrapped version of GPT that does PDF reading or whatever it might be, unless it's domain specific to an enterprise with all basically the bells and whistles they want with it, like security functionality, trained on their industry, trained with a database that's specific to their business, whether it's their own or something they purchased or got or acquired in some way, then it's irrelevant. Basically it's something that anybody and their mother can do. And that's massive. And it's also, by the way, not the first time this has happened in recent tech history. We will call it Twitter for this, but a lot of people used to create their Twitter apps, right? And then suddenly Twitter would announce the functionality and kill their business.
Right.
And we saw that over and over again in the late aughts and the early 2010s. And to me, this is just a replay of that. It's like, whoops, you hooked yourself to a system rather than a problem. And now you're gone.
Right. And, that's the challenge that a lot of technology companies have had, and a lot of brands, whether they're technology companies or not, have had over the course of time, that when you become overly reliant on one company's platform, you run the risk that particular company now holds all the cards.
Right.
And as soon as they decide to change their rules, for example, about access to their data or their API, or they launch an in-house version of the thing you do, and it's easier for the customer, the consumer, the buyer to do the single shot solution and get both things from one place. you have a problem. I mean, and certainly all the tweet decks in the world learned that lesson. Even brands who became so reliant on things like Facebook apps and then saw Mark Zuckerberg throttle traffic to those apps after the brand paid good money to develop them. Then Zuck said, okay, it's great that you've all followed my lead. You did what I told you to do. Now I'm going to charge you to get people to even look at those apps. And it's like, well, wait a second. We just built them because you said that was our way to market on your platform. Oh, it is.
Like,
but now you got to pay me. It's like, it's crazy. I have to plug in right now or we're going to lose our feed. So please go ahead and make some noise while I do that. And I will be back in about 3 seconds.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on with that. The reality is that codependence, and that's what it is, a codependence on a platform creates a massive problem. And codependency in real life creates real problems for people too,
right.
By the way. But I mean, all jokes aside, the thing, God, I think that's the 5th time I said that. I apologize, people. I'll work on that for the next episode. But the reality is, with this thing in particular, I think what you're seeing is that a lot of people that basically jumped onto the generative AI bandwagon without thinking through the business plan or saying, I'm going to go into business. I'm inspired by this. Let me figure out what my business plan is. Are now suddenly going to hit the skids.
Yeah.
And many of them before they even got started.
Yep, absolutely. I think you're right.
Yeah, it's sad. But it is business 101.
It is. So, it is what it is. Yeah.
Should we actually, we're going to have a short episode this week. Should we hit the brainer, no brainer?
Let's do it. Should I hit the brainer?
You're the smart one. Come on, man.
But the no brainer is so obvious that,
I know that. I need that.
but I think I'm going to build on what you just said in a way, right? That this is a running theme across all of the episodes. If you've been with us from the start, if you've been patient and suffered through the 19 or so hours of content that we've created since kicking the show off, 6 months ago or whatever it was, is that whether you are a brand marketer, an agency, or an entrepreneur looking to build a business in this complicated, fast-moving, often frustrating space, I think OpenAI's introduction of GPTs is yet another reminder that you absolutely must go back to the business fundamentals. You need to be solving a real problem. You need to develop a real use case. You need to understand how to measure and or define and measure the benefits that this technology brings to your business or to the people who do business with your business, your customers, right? So if you're a marketer, there might be a couple of different ways to think about it, right? One might be that this might give you a way to sort of create a new and different touch point with your customers. But then you've got to build something using GPT or ultimately as part of a larger, more broadly kind of impactful no-code movement that actually matter to your customers. If you're or you've got to build something that works for you internally that enhances your productivity and so on and so forth. And if you're a technology company, if all you're doing is wrapping somebody else's large language model with some thin layer of functionality without a whole lot of thought or strategy or business benefit, then you really need to go back to the drawing board. So again, to me, the brainer at the highest level, if you level it up from everything we're discussing here, it goes back to that idea of, you've got to be delivering real business benefit. And that's job number one when you start to think about what any of these announcements, any of these tools, any of these technologies mean. When you start to hear the hype and you put some thought and start to tinker with them and figure out what they really mean for you.
And just for the record, picking fights with Elon Musk on Twitter or X is not a business plan. All right. So the no-brainer. If you're a Plus or an Enterprise user and you've used GPT for the same task, like 3 or 4 or 5 dozens of times, whatever it might be, like summarize this document, go in there and create your own GPT that does that task. And you can literally just save yourself some time. Maybe it's just a few seconds, maybe it's a few minutes, and have this thing ready to go. So, play with this technology. I think it's really the early predecessor, the MP3, if you would, to today's Spotify or Apple Music, and, see how it can work for you and make your life a little bit easier and save you a few minutes.
Very good. All right. Let's roll on out, my friend.
Ooh, one more thing. Do we want to tease what we got coming?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Episode?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
So everybody, we know that ChatGPT is turning 1 year old. We don't care. We already gave them enough bandwidth today. But what we're going to do is it definitely was a crossing the chasm moment, as you like to say, Greg. And we're going to do 1 year in review, the generative AI boom. Where are we now?
All right, awesome. Do you want to work us out the back end of this podcast, or do you want me to do the
Tell
honors?
Everybody to subscribe, like, share, write a review for us. And, of course, visit nobrainerpodcast.com. If you have any suggestions, we welcome them. If you have feedback, we welcome them. If you want to be our Patreon or sponsor, we welcome that too. But all jokes aside with that, number six,
most popular
Geoff
marketing AI podcast.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely like and subscribe us. And, we do appreciate the help. So do give it out and tell folks about the show. We appreciate you.
All right. See you next time. Bye.